Hello everyone, Sergeant Argubright here, and today we will be reacting to Operation Barbarossa, Part 1, Planning the Catastrophe. And this is by someone called Potential History. I've watched some of their videos before, pretty historically accurate, but they have an interesting sense of humor, so let's try to excuse that. So, let's begin. Breaking news. Hold on, let me turn this up.
It appears, based on the latest gossip from the Reichstag, that preparations for the invasion of the Soviet Union are now underway. In a press conference, Chief of Staff Franz Halder neither confirmed or denied this being the case, but did mention that the previous template used in France and Poland of a hard-hitting, fast, short campaign would be used. The discussion was...
Because that is the solution to everything, right? Right, Halder? Yeah, very intelligent.
When one reporter raised his hand, questioning the wisdom of this, as the Soviet Union is a much bigger country and this may not work.
Yeah.
This question went unanswered and no more were allowed to be asked. A hot mic did pick up a few lines from staff, with the only intelligible lines being, "Who cares how big it is? They're just Slavs. How hard could they fight back? I guess only time will tell."
Oh my god. I mean, that is accurate, though. That the Germans saw that even late war in 1944, the Germans, the German army, on purpose, they prefer to put troops on the west than the east, especially during the Battle of the Bulge, because they thought that the Slavs, naturally were worse.
I mean, surely they're going to plan this out thoroughly, right? Bank on them giving up, right? With this imminent conflict quickly approaching, the German war economy is going to have to be on its front foot to keep up with material production to continue the war effort. For more, we go to our man on the ground, Heinrich, who is in a German munitions factory. Heinrich, can you hear me?
Oh my god. That is loud.
It appears he's been called up with the rest of the factory workers to go fight in the campaign. So I guess, this thing does need to end.
Yeah.
Can we get another guy out there? All of them? Okay.
Well, actually, the Germans didn't really have a problem with manpower, if that's what they're trying to say. I don't know if that's what they're trying to say or not, but if they are, just know Germany was fine with manpower until probably late 1943, 1944, somewhere around there.
Well, apparently that's all we have for now. But tonight at 11, citizens of Berlin are claiming that their city is being bombed in a very strange case of the Mandela effect. Even though Reichsminister Goering promised that this could never possibly happen. So how can they be so mistaken?
Oh.
Real quick before we start, I'd like to thank Swagbucks for sponsoring this video. Swagbucks.
Thank you, Swagbucks.
Website where you can earn money from home by doing surveys, watching videos, playing games, stuff like that. It's super easy and something you can do in your downtime to build up points to earn gift cards to places like Amazon, eBay, Walmart, various restaurants, and travel sites. I actually used to use Swagbucks a lot, and through the year I would build up as many points as I could and cash them out for gift cards and things that I could use for Christmas gifts at the end of the year. So if this is something that interests you, be sure to
Let's
skip. Invincible.
Wait, what?
Up and get $5 just for doing so. In the spring of 1941, Germany looked to themselves and to a lot of the world as invincible. Quickly rearming into a highly militarized state after the Nazis took power, they were able to conquer almost all of their neighbors, the crown jewel of which being France, the foe that they had fought to a standstill in the last war, much to the happiness of the German high command. many of whose members had been veterans of that war and lived through the defeat. Although Britain remained unconquered, by the end of the Greek campaign, the majority of continental Europe was under the Nazis' thumb.
Wait. Let's look at this map.
Remained unconquered. By the end of the Greek campaign, the majority of continental Europe was under the...
Wait. Oh. Oh! Ugh, that is gross. Absolutely disgusting. Okay. First of all, North Transylvania does not look like that. It's a lot more skinny. And Slovakia just looks weird. I can't really put my finger on why, it just looks weird. And Romania, Moldova, that little top part of Romania looks not right. Should extend more upward. Yeah, it's gross. Oh, goodness.
The Nazis' thumb. And Hitler was finally able to set his sights on the thing that he had been writing and speaking against for so many years. The, quote, Judeo-Bolshevist bastion of the Soviet Union. The physical embodiment of evil according to the actually evil Nazi ideology. And with his flanks secured as well as they could be.
Oh, yeah, I was just about to say that, but I guess it's right there.
Hitler turned his gaze east, and the invasion was set for June 22nd, 1940, where the German armies, separated into three prongs, Army Group North, Center, and South, would move in and with a swift kick collapse the Soviet Union. Center and South.
Wait, what does it say? Oh yeah, with help of minor Axis allies.
A swift kick collapse.
And Finns here too.
Soviet Union. The common narrative in the 70-plus years has gone something like this. German army invades the USSR and in a series of incredible victories pushed the Red Army's Asiatic hordes back to the gates of Moscow and would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for that meddling Russian winter and its stupid rainy season too.
Stop! They didn't win just because of the winter. I hate how everyone says this. I went through a video that debunked this, by the way. Y'all should watch that. It's called 7 Red Army Myths Debunked Reaction, I think. I don't know.
However, thanks to a lot of work from historians like David Stahill, whose work I'll be referring to a lot in this video, a much more realistic conclusion begins to unfold. As this operation is probably one of the, if not the most muddled by myths in all of military.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe he was just joking when he said that. Okay. Oh gosh, but yeah.
Military history. The first being that the German generals were all very nervous to take on the Soviet Union in the first place, and that they did so out of military obedience rather than their own wishes. This is something that comes straight from the German generals' memoirs after the war.
Oh, goodness, memoirs.
As dead Hitler became a very convenient excuse for everything that went wrong in the war, and is an outcome.
Exactly, and it makes sense, right? How they can just blame Hitler for everything. That makes sense. That they would do that.
Of the good old everything is Hitler's fault myth that's used to explain
Oops.
all of the German army's shortcomings. See this video by John House that I've referred to a few times for more information on that. It's all Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler. The reality is that it was actually...
So what did that say?
It's all Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler, Adolf Hitler. The reality is that it was actually France, not the Soviet Union, that made the German commanders so nervous. German generals...
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because, there was no gear. They didn't think that the victory would be as swift as it was, first of all. They thought it was going to be a long, drawn-out war, just like World War I at the beginning. Especially since France's military was much larger than Germany's and more powerful. Not in every way, but in a lot of ways. And they had the help of Britain. And France, they could have easily won, but they decided to play on the defensive side. And Italy was a wild card. If France started winning, Italy would have declared war on Germany, because Italy was sort of like... Italy was just going to be on whoever's side was winning, basically. That's basically what they were doing, and... Yeah, and of course, the Soviet Union, they're all overconfident, they beat France, and they're winning battles against Britain and, the Balkans and North Africa. some of the time. Maybe. Not the Italians, though. They did not do good against Britain.
In World War II very much had their heads still in World War I. Most of them were veterans in that war, and Hitler's message of a stab in the back really resonated with their feelings of humiliation at the loss of that war.
So interesting seeing these generals, like, when they're younger. Look at that.
Of a stab in the back.
They grow up so fast.
Really resonated with their feelings of humiliation at the loss.
Oh my gosh, that one's probably the most surprising. Look at that.
Something very well documented by Rob Citino. In World War I, France was unable to be conquered by the German forces, and when it was proposed again to be invaded by Hitler, although German commanders liked the idea, they were understandably nervous about getting involved in another potentially 4-year-long attritional war. Once France had been beaten, so quickly at that, the Soviet Union didn't seem such a daunting task, as Russia had been defeated in 1918. Add to this the unimpressive...
That is true. Everyone's always like, oh my gosh, Russia in their winter is unstoppable. And that's why Germany and Hitler and Napoleon, they're just idiots. Well, that's not right. Napoleon was very not smart for doing what he did in Russia. But I think you get what I'm saying. I forgot what I was going to say.
Seems such a daunting task.
Oh yeah, Germany won. Like, you get these stupid memes where Russia is unstoppable, but yet Germany wins against Russia, and they were winning before the Russian Revolution too. It's not like they won. It's not like the Russian Revolution made them win, because Germany was still winning before the Russian Revolution happened.
Performances in the Poland campaign and the Winter War.
Yeah, those memes just annoy me, because Russia got beaten so many times. Like, they got defeated by Estonia at one point in between World War I and II.
Along with their failing with expeditionary forces and military assistance in Spain, the USSR looked like it could not stand up to the full invading force of the German army, at least from their point of view at the time, resulting in a good bit of eagerness from the German High Command to take this on, and plans were drawn up. However, this is where the series of mistakes begin to be made that were not entirely obvious or were flat out ignored by those at the top at the time. The point of dissent in the German High Command was with the logistics officers. German Quartermaster General Edward Wagner raised a lot of concerns about taking on the Soviet Union in a typical German-style short campaign with the resources that Germany had currently at its disposal. Stahel mentions that in a memo from him to the High Command, he says that with the current stocks of supplies, an army of 2 million men, about half the number that would actually be deployed, 300,000 horses, also half of the number eventually deployed, and 500,000 vehicles, that the German army would only have enough supplies at the ready to reach Smolensk, which is right here, with the ultimate goal to many of them, Moscow, being a bit further along down here.
Wait, no, it wasn't. Moscow wasn't the main, goal. Also, by the way, it's a bit interesting how they use a map from, 1936. Anyways, it was the AA line that they were reaching for. Follow my mouse here. I'll move this. It doesn't really show it, but it's from, here all the way down there, sort of, but way further. It's called the AA line. It's from Astrakhan, which is way down here, next to the Caucasus, and this, and this Soviet city that I can't really pronounce. Yeah, it's interesting how they say that how they can only go up to Smolensk when the target is all the way over here.
And that to continue, you would see a kind of stop-start action needing to take place, as more supplies would need to be created and shipped from Germany. In hearing this, you would think that that alone would be enough to either stop planning and abandon the operation, or completely rework it to have it be taken on at a smaller scale.
Well, to be fair, Germany kind of had to invade the Soviet Union. It's not like they were mentally not. It's not like they're mentally retarded, for lack of a better word. Stupid, I guess I could say. It's just that they were like really hoping. They were hoping that they could defeat the Soviet Union, right? Because they have all the resources they could ever want there. Especially oil. Their economy was not doing so good. I think I saw somewhere that the German economy would crash at around like September of 1941, or that they would run out of oil in 1941 in September. I forget. I saw the statistic like 2 years ago, so take that with a grain of salt.
However, those in the high command who knew about this did not see it as a problem, and the reason why really gets to the core of why Barbarossa ended up being such a failure. Germany historically, and in its moves in the previous conquests in World War II, had planned and fought short campaigns. Now, this was mostly out of necessity, as Germany is a relatively small nation in Central Europe. They would mobilize their army.
Small? Germany's not that small.
Fight their enemy, and demobilize, sending the men back to work in the factories, creating material for the next move. This meant that for the German war economy to continue functioning, that Barbarossa...
Oh, I think I've watched like that before. They have like a thing.
had to be planned and executed as a short campaign. The High Command promised the German industrial companies that they would have their workers back by September, meaning they planned to invade, subdue, and demobilize in about 3 months. What? Plan to promise the German Barbarossa had to be planned and executed as a short campaign. The High Command promised the German industrial companies that they would have their workers back by September.
September. Think about that. How I just said it's September their economy would crash. So that makes sense. That makes sense.
Meaning they plan to invade, subdue, and demobilize in about 3 months. What?
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
We worked in Poland and Western Europe with small countries with limited areas for their armies to retreat into. So once enough infrastructure was taken, the country had no choice but to surrender. But in the vastness of the Soviet Union, this tactic was not going to fly. And, like I said previously, these were things that were missed or completely ignored. And this was compounded by the atrocious intelligence provided by the intelligence arms of the German army, who were, to their credit, able to guess fairly accurately the numbers of Soviet troops on the border, but entirely misjudged the number of reserve units that were either further back or in the form of trained reservists that could be called up. Intelligence gathering was difficult because the Soviet Union was a closed country, so reliable information was hard to come by. But in the previous decades, lots of German officers had worked and trained in the Soviet Union on modern weapon systems, such as tanks to get around the Versailles Treaty, would have had at least some knowledge as to what the numerical capabilities of the Red Army were. But according to Stayhill, none of them were even questioned about this in the preparations for the invasion. So we have a template created for Western Europe that will work on small countries, being applied to the vast Soviet Union. Problem number 2 on top of this is that the German invasion lacked...
As Tick once said, it's like playing chess on the go board.
Any sort of grand strategy. The only real objective was to conquer Russia, and that's left rather vague as to what it means. There was some mention of once they captured Moscow and had conquered basically all the good parts of the Soviet Union, setting up a defensive position called the Archangelsk-Astrakhan line.
Oh, that's what I was talking about. Wait, so Archangelsk. Okay, that's how you pronounce it. What did they say? I wasn't paying attention as much.
Good parts of the Soviet Union, setting up a defensive position called the Archangelsk-Astrakhan line, or AA line.
I'm trying to find out how to pronounce that.
Setting up a defensive position called the Archangelsk. Astrakhan line.
Archangelsk. Okay.
Or AA line, which was kind of a general stopping point where they would set up defensive positions and call the thing a success. But the general hope was just to collapse the Soviet Union to where there was no more resistance and it would be completely in German hands, which is really just too broad and very open to interpretation. German commanders really thought that the Soviet Union was in such a weakened state.
Ugh, that looks weird. He's like staring at me.
That they would drive in as far as Minsk, or at the furthest Smolensk, and would have destroyed the Red Army and its command structure to the point that no organized resistance would be possible, and that the remaining conquest would just be a smooth march through the Soviet Union, hence the rather short deadlines. And the potential problems to do with lack of supplies and potential lack of ability to transport those supplies as they got further and further away from the jumping off point would would be mitigated as resistance would be small and sporadic, so large quantities of ammunition and replacements would not be required. The most outstanding thing, though, is that the Germans have absolutely no contingency plan for if things don't work out like this.
Wow, I never really thought of that. The Germans didn't have a contingency plan.
They are literally assuming that they are so good that after their initial operations, their enemy is not going to be able to recover and that they'll just give up. And they're confident enough in this that they 100% plan for it. And knowing this, a lot of the things that we'll discuss later on begin to make a lot more sense. Now, unlike Kursk, Barbarossa is way too big of a topic to fit into just one video. And within the next month, I'll be putting out a part 2 that I will go into.
I think there's 3 parts, as I was looking for this video.
What happened during the operation and the results of the planning. I'm sorry.
Wait,
what happened during the one video. And within the next month, I'll be putting out a part 2 that I will go into what happened during the operation and the results of the planning. I'm sorry. But before I wrap this up, the biggest question that I had when looking into all of this is why? Why would they go forward with something that had so many
I just explained that. Resources. They need resources. And for all of you people, like, that will comment, they can just get the oil in the Middle East. Well, the thing about the Middle East, there's like so many problems with that. The first is oil drilling was in its infancy. So if they go there, it's gonna take them like a pretty long time to be able to like really develop oil drilling. And then, of course, there's the British Royal Navy to deal with. It's going to be really hard to get all those resources from the Middle East back to the German Reich while avoiding the Royal Navy. Especially since, the British have the Suez Canal, Cyprus, Gibraltar, and Malta. It's going to be very difficult to take all those strategic locations to partially ensure that you'll be fine. And it's not just oil. Another major thing is food. There are people in Germany and its occupied territories that were literally starving. And yeah, Ukraine, they had a bunch of food and grain, so yeah, that's what they wanted that.
And not put any thought into what happens if it doesn't go exactly as they expected.
Yeah, that was kind of stupid how they didn't have a contingency plan. And they thought that it was just this, just like the Soviets on the border were like the only resistance there. There was one German general that said maybe there'll be like 100 divisions as reserves. If we take out all those other divisions at the border, but actually it was way more than 100. But yeah, that's yeah.
I mean, at least just in case. The supply situation alone seems like it would be enough to really take a step back and rethink the whole thing.
And why do you think they would have a supply problem? Oh wait, resources.
And it seems like no reasonable person would pursue this. But I think the answer to it is that you can't answer this reasonably because you're not dealing with a reasonable thought process. And once you realize
yes, you are.
That it starts to make a lot of crazy decisions that the Germans make in World War II as a whole make at least a little more sense.
Come on. They were right this whole video, but the idea that Germany didn't have any reasonable reasons is a bit absurd. Wait, I'm trying to think. Usually I like to tell myself that it's more likely that I'm wrong than someone is just stupid. Because that makes, more sense. Because most people, especially if they're a government organization, that is very militaristic, it's more likely that they, have a reason.
In one of Stahill's lectures for
That makes sense, at least.
books, I think he words this very well, and I'll paraphrase. He says basically, what does Hitler always talk about in his writings and in his speeches? He's always talking about the triumph of the will. That the way he went from a corporal in the German army in World War I to the leader of the Third Reich was his willfulness to do it and his refusal to give up. And this all ties into the Nazi ideology that I've been mentioning. According to their hierarchy of the races and all the other lunacy that they subscribe to, the superiority of the German people means that their will and their ability to press on and refuse defeat is in and of itself what will drive them to victory. And that really, to a ludicrous extent, regardless of the circumstances, this intrinsic part of them that they claim to have will defy the odds and bring victory against the other subhumans that just don't possess this. And we really see this play out.
Well, to be honest, a lot of that's propaganda.
Once the operation launches and the Germans take on this thing that they're under-equipped and under-prepared to do. But all this is to say that you can't really look at it logically. You kind of have to look at it through this warped ideology and keep their crazy view of the world in mind. And that's where I think I'll leave it for part one.
They were so cool. They had so many. Okay. It's like they got the facts right, but they didn't get, like, their motives right. Like, they got the what and the when correct, but they didn't get the why correct. Like, I don't know, they seemed like they knew what they were doing. They seemed like everything was correct, and they were so in depth, but and then they got that last part was wrong, and it got me disappointed. But yeah, I mean, it was still cool. It was still, I still enjoyed it, right? Oh yeah. I'm gonna be reacting to part 2 tomorrow, and subscribe and have a great day.